So I was looking down the list and I saw that a lot of the physicians had MPHs. So my name is Dr. Raymona Lawrence, and I am an associate professor of health policy and community health in the Jinping Su College of Public Health here at Georgia Southern. My education is actually pretty special, and it may be special to you guys as well, because I am a triple eagle. So that means that I have my bachelor's, my master's, and my doctorate from Georgia Southern. So initially, when I graduated from college with my bachelor's degree, I went in as a behavioral health specialist at Pineland Mental Health. And so that was my first real job. And so after that, I actually had always wanted to be a physician. I thought that being a physician was the thing that you have to do if you want to help people and to really be in a medical type of field. And so my next job was in Augusta at the Medical College of Georgia. And so I went there and I worked in the lab. And so I ran blood samples for people with sickle cell disease. And I started to look at what physicians had, because I was really concentrating on going to medical school. So I was looking down the list and I saw that a lot of the physicians had MPHs. So I looked at this thing called an MPH and tried to figure out what that was. And I saw that it meant a Master of Public Health. And so I looked into public health and I saw that people with public health did prevention and they work with communities and all of that type of stuff. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is my real idea of what a doctor should be. And so I left that job and I came back to Georgia Southern and got my master's in public health. And as I was finishing that position, I got a job as a science teacher. So I still was kind of thinking about medicine and wanting to go into medical school. So I said, well, with all of this knowledge I have from taking the MCAT, I can go and take a teaching certification exam and I will go be a teacher. So I was a middle school teacher, a science teacher for 3 years at Meadow Middle School before I came back. And after that, I came back to get my doctorate. So once I started my doctoral degree, I went to the RAC. And at the RAC, I was the wellness program director for the university. So I planned programs around 7 different dimensions of wellness for Georgia Southern University. And then when I finished my doctorate, I knew that my research would die if I did not just go ahead and start doing some type of research type of position. So I became an adjunct professor in the College of Public Health and eventually got onto what we call the tenure track. And I have been a professor ever since then. So that was a long journey, but I am here and that's how I got here. Yes. So my main research focus is community engagement in rural minority populations. So I specifically work with a disease called sickle cell disease, which is a genetic disorder that primarily affects African Americans. And so right now I am the principal investigator of a grant, and this grant is a $9.8 million study. I have 14 different sites. And what we're doing is comparing the effectiveness of an intervention against people that don't get that intervention. So this intervention is peer mentoring. So what we're doing is looking at how do people transition from pediatric to adult care, and how do they do that when they have a mentor who is kind of like a friend that also has sickle cell disease. And then when they don't have that friend and that mentor, do they have better health outcomes with the mentor or without? So that's what comparative effectiveness is. So what you do is you take 2 different interventions that you know have worked. So we know peer mentoring has worked. We know just traditional education has worked, and you compare them to see which one works best. So I do a lot of that type of work. Community engagement is really my specialty because I love to ensure that minority populations have a voice in healthcare. So all of my collaborators are physicians pretty much. So I still work with all the medical stuff that I would have if I would have been a physician, but I have a very unique place on these teams as a person who has a doctorate in public health, because I see a person as a whole. I see them as how they fit into a community, whereas the physicians are looking at their medical history. They look at them as an individual. And so my perspective gives them a lot of information about how they can ensure that the person can thrive outside of the healthcare environment, because you only spend about 10% of your life in healthcare. Then the other 90% is out in the community. And so when the physicians don't have people like us on their teams, they miss out on a lot that would help the community to thrive. So as a professor, I get to do that. I'm also the editor-in-chief of the Journal of the Georgia Public Health Association. So I get to look at other people's research and pull it together and help them to get that information out to other researchers who could use that to make lives better for their patients and their participants and people who are in their communities. And so I do that. And I also am the director of research for the Sickle Cell Community Consortium, where we look at community-based organizations and how they come together to ensure that people with sickle cell disease have better lives. So as a professor, I get to do a lot of fun and variable things, but it all comes back together through community engagement in rural minority populations. So, y'all, public health is so cool. And I will tell you why. Because remember, I said that I wanted to be a physician. And so what physicians do is they diagnose individual people. But the coolest thing about public health is I get to go in and diagnose communities. And so I don't look at individual people and what they have going on. Like, for instance, if somebody had diabetes, I wouldn't go in and look at their numbers for their A1C or their blood work or anything like that. I would look at a whole community and say, why are all these African Americans or all these Hispanic people, why are they clustered together in this one community, and what is happening in this community that makes them have diabetes more than other people? And then I get to go in and develop a program that helps to prevent that from happening anymore, so they don't even have to enter into the healthcare system. So that is absolutely the coolest thing to me, because I diagnose communities, not just individual people, and I do things to make sure that they don't have to come back and enter into the medical system.